It is 4:02 now, 4:03 p.m. Are there any other committees that need to call themselves to order?
Yes. May I call the West School Council to order? Am I muted? No, you can hear me.
No.
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So I will call the Mount Greylock School Council to order.
Okay, I believe we are all called to order now. I will be watching the meeting through the Zoom windows. If anybody has something that they want to share, you can use the chat feature and you can send a message that way. I will try to have this open on 2 screens. Please feel free to speak up. Right now it is public comments. So if there is anybody who would like to speak up, please virtually raise your hand, send a chat, and I will call on you. I think I just heard a beep. So either somebody wants to talk or dinner is ready somewhere.
There's nothing in the chat.
Nothing in the chat. Right. So there are going once, going twice. Okay, no public comments at this time. So let's move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of minutes from February 12th, 2020. I will entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved. This is
So
Christina.
Christina moves. Ally seconds.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Now turning to agenda item 4.
Greg, just so everybody knows, I have a V30 attempting to enter the meeting. There is no name, so but it's an open session, so just I can't control what happens once I hit admit. So
Okay. If there are any issues, we can always close this down and reuse the link again. So if anything happens today, we will just immediately close down the meeting and then not let such a person back on. So we thank you all for your patience as we navigate the new
I see
technology.
a person. I don't know this person, so I don't know if she makes
Yes,
a quorum.
it's Heather Ostrander.
Oh, hi Heather. Is that a quorum for you, Nolan?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me, hold on.
You have Mary, Heather, Amy on this call. So I
Oh,
don't know.
no, it's not a quorum yet.
Okay. All right. Keep going. Sorry, Steve.
Oh, no problem. If you ever do notice at some point that you do get a quorum, we will just pause and let that committee be called to order.
Okay.
Okay, so take 2, returning to agenda item 4, remote learning update from the admin team. So we prepared a couple of,
Wait a minute. Did we vote the motion on the floor minutes?
oh,
Approved,
yes, we did. It
seconded?
was approved 3-0.
Okay. Great. So our remote learning plan was sent out last week, or when April 6th or 7th, in that time frame. Since then, the teachers have been providing the update for.
Hold on, let me make sure I'm on mute, sorry.
Hi. Roger, say hi. Hi.
Are we good?
I think so.
Okay. So, we have, we've pushed out a lot of emails, a lot of information, robocalls. So our learning plan was put up and sent out. Teachers then started to engage families. The memorandum of understanding was signed with the school committee and MGRSD. And so we are working with families, faculty, staff to have learning plans for the students in regards to, what remote learning looks like. So the principals, if you want to weigh in on, the feedback, we launched the teacher survey and the results there. Some very, very positive. Some of the what do some still need in order to continue continue to be successful. Sorry, Steve, did I lose you?
No, I'm just trying to come on in a second one, just so that I can see if anybody's raising their hands or anything. So I'm just having a second window open.
Okay.
And this way I can have the chat open up as well. And so if anybody wants to speak up during this, please let me know. When we chose these agenda items, we knew this was at the very beginning of our shift to remote learning, and we thought that this would be a good time for us to check in as a community to get a sense of how things are going and to hear some feedback from all the different stakeholders.
Okay, so so again, like I said, we did the teacher survey. We went over some of the results of, the next steps with the MGIA Executive Board on Tuesday. There was really no surprises in there of what some of the needs still were. So we're going to be working on some additional professional development opportunities, as well as we got the Chromebooks out, or at least identified for the paraprofessionals that needed the Chromebooks. We're working on additional headphones that some teachers are asking for that are adult size in nature. So from our end, I'm going to get a bit over to the principals to talk about feedback that they've received. Joelle?
I had my hand up, Mary.
Sorry, I didn't realize that.
I almost never use that feature. I will lower my hand now. I think that I keep referring to this as the adventure that no one asked to go on. And I'm super grateful to our teachers and our parents. We're all learning new things. We are all, as individuals and as parents and as professionals, under extraordinary amounts of stress. I know we hear from parents a lot, which we really appreciate. And for the elementary schools, we've got a whole bunch of parents who are at home with little kids, many people more than one, trying to implement remote learning the best they can. And though there have been some struggles, I have to honestly say, and I don't know if Ellie is here, but I know she would agree with me, that there's just been this overwhelming sense of like, we got this together. I met with all the teachers last week to see how things were going with them, and to ask both about what we can do to support them in making implementation easier, and what are some of the surprise positive things that have come from this, because I'm really trying my best to focus on silver linings where we can. And some of the positives that I think are worth noting here are that there's an incredibly high level of collaboration among staff within grade levels and across grade levels, with technology staff, with the administration, to work together to create this whole new system of learning. As people are getting more comfortable, I think a number of teachers are seeing that some people are recording lessons and some people are doing more live lessons. It has started as what you're comfortable with, and there's been some people really love the recorded lessons. A lot of teachers are also saying the face-to-face live is a really nice way to be able to really connect with students. We're working at Wes closely with parents, and I'm sure Nolan is in Lanesboro also, to help balance expectations, because while, this is remote, so we're conscious of screen time as well. So we're trying to find a balance between what kinds of projects we can give and assignments we can give that take kids off of screen time. The biggest feedback I get from parents are parents kind of feeling like, I'm failing at this somehow. And that's the worst part for me. And so we're continually saying, we've got to go about this with grace, and we've got to give each other a break. There was some fear starting out that if every single thing didn't get done, then kids were going to get held back, we're trying to dispel that that misinformation every way that we possibly can. We're in our team of our student support team of Ellie, our assistant principal, our social worker, our school psychologist, school nurse. We meet twice a week. We usually meet once a week when school is in session. We've been meeting twice a week. And all of us are very much with the teachers trying to wrap around families to support the best we can. So I think it's been stressful, but I think it's going as well as we can expect it to at this point.
I would also like to just briefly add, I love getting the little vlogs that the two of you are making at Wes.
Thank you. Out of my comfort zone. But, you know, we're doing that because we are trying to maintain a sense of community. And part of that is FaceTime, you know, trying to let people see that we're here. We're not scripting that. So you're kind of seeing a conversation between us, which we just want to try to keep it real. We've had a lot of parents sending us things to put out about their kids and things that they're doing. I had a parent just email me this proud little girl with this giant geography project from 2nd grade, just all laid out beautifully on her table. And it was nothing to do with the computer, actually. So, you know, I think we're moving along, but the partnerships that we're nurturing and continuing are really strong.
It might be nice to have some of those pictures for maybe the next newsletter.
Sure. Which newsletter?
The West newsletter, for instance.
Oh, well, we're doing the vlogs instead of the newsletters.
Okay.
Yeah, and we show all the pictures on the vlog.
Okay.
So that
Yeah.
picture is coming this Friday.
Excellent.
Yeah, Ellie is there. Hi.
Right.
Okay, that's all I had to say of that. I don't know, Mary or Nolan, if you wanted to say
Who's
anything.
next, Kim?
I don't see anyone's hand, so Mary,
Oh,
go.
so I'll go. Okay. So a little different at the middle school, high school. Again, incredibly grateful to the parents and to the teachers, but also to the students, where the majority of them are responding independently. Certainly in the middle school, there's significant parent support, but much of this is transactionary between the students and the teachers. One of the things that we're seeing already is that where digital learning was in place, particularly teachers who were using Canvas actively, our learning management system, or who had been, to a lesser degree, Google Classroom, because we've seen more people migrating to Canvas, that the transition was easier because kids were comfortable with the platform. And where teachers are just adopting it, the students aren't necessarily, even though they might be used to it because they've seen it with another teacher, they're just getting used to it with a teacher who's recently adopted it. I think for us, the challenge is finding that sweet spot of assignments, understanding that we're looking at 2.5 hours of work over the course of a week, and trying to, and recognizing what that really means. I think in the first week, in the conversations with teachers, both in full faculty and then within departments, and talking to the team leaders and the department leaders, I think we're forgetting that 2.5 hours without the teacher is very different. Like, I think people were pushing out what they knew could easily do in 2.5 hours within a classroom setting, but the teacher's there to tap in, to answer questions immediately. And while students can access their teachers, you know, they might have a question while they're doing something and send an email and the teacher gets back speedily, it's not the same. And that's just something I think our faculty is needed to come to understand. So I'm seeing some changes this week, and I'm anticipating next week there'll be sort of a rebalancing, rebalancing the work that goes out.
So just a question, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
On that point, I know in the past we've had peer tutoring and we've had students from Williams College to assist. What resources do we have right now?
So the resources, we don't have the Williams students there. That program is not running. We do have some people who are available to volunteer that we could pull into with Zoom rooms and try to do some breakout rooms within there. I think full-on independent, setting up independent tutorials. We're pulling back from that yet. We'd like to have a little bit more control about who interacts with students in this virtual environment. But we do have, one thing we do have that's set up properly is the writing tutors that we've had through Williams, but they've sort of moved independently into our writing program. And so they've been available through the library. So that's one place, but there haven't been, at this point, there haven't been sort of substantial enough assignments yet that they've been tapped yet. I don't know if that sort of starts to answer your question, but we haven't replicated the after-school homework help program that we've had with the Williams tutors. We do have, I mean, the paraprofessionals have been working with students on IEPs in collaboration with the special ed teachers, and that's, particularly in the middle school, that's worked really well. Paras are also in the regular classroom help everyone, and that's not something that's available right now. But looking down, now that we know we're going past May 4th and trying to see how students are doing, how teachers are able to get back to to the students who have questions, we can see what's next. But I do have a privacy concern and just sort of a management concern to make sure that anyone who's not in our immediate circle at Mount Greylock, that there's sort of oversight if they're interacting with students.
Right.
I'm just thinking about one of the other things that Joelle said. I think we're ready to start assessing more thoughtfully as we think about what's the next week.
And I think we sent out a survey on Tuesday.
Or what? What went out on Tuesday?
I thought we were going to send out a survey to families about how things were going, internet connectivity and stuff like that.
So remember Tuesday we got the news that the schools were being closed. So we're trying to push out one email.
Okay.
So it has not gone out yet. I was going to send it Wednesday.
Okay.
So we'll be pushing that out with a Friday push that will have, other information in it as well.
Okay. Thanks, Mary.
Sure.
Was there anything you wanted to add, Nolan?
Yes. I mean, a lot of what I'm about to say is about along the same lines of Joelle, except I'm about a week behind. I'm meeting with all the teachers this week. And so far I've met with about 2/3. I ask a couple of questions. First, I check in on their emotional health, make sure they're okay. A lot of teachers are excited to be with their students, but they're having a hard time separating their work life from their family life, and it's taking a toll on them mentally. And they're doing a lot of great work. I ask what's going well. The communications with families they love how in connection they are with each other and the families and the family support that they have. They are also really happy with all the collaborations going on. Their main concerns are the technology piece, students not being able to stay connected, and the connectivity in their own household. So there's a lot of good things happening. And since we're in the second full week of this implementation, I'm already seeing teachers excited to try new things and implement some new strategies in the classroom.
Thanks. And I also want to thank you and Kim for the videos you are doing with Jason to give us the updates.
Christina, yes, and Christina, she was on last week. So we're scheduled for one tomorrow at 11:30. That those community broadcasts are giving school updates, town updates, and so we're pushing them through WillieNet and PCTV, as well as on the district website, so that both communities are hearing the coronavirus information particular to those towns, but then getting the educational update as well. Steve, are you there?
Yep, I'm there. Should we move on to point B, discussion of what we will do now that, I think we somewhat covered this a bit.
Yeah.
The real question I have, and the real information I would love to get is the plans for the summer next year, and just starting to think how we're going to deal with the students as they move up, given how this year is ending.
Okay.
May I say?
And are there any areas that are going to be particularly challenging, any skill sets that we're particularly concerned about? I know at the college level, we're very worried about, you know, the lab experience that some students are not going to be getting.
Right. So I know that the closure was made on Tuesday. The governor and the commissioner have not brought us back together as educational leaders to talk about what potentially we'd be looking at for next year. The commissioner was very clear in his talk with us on Tuesday morning that we need to shift and start addressing some of the power standards. And he hasn't brought us back together again. So there is an advisory that will be coming out from the Department of Education. So it's a little premature for us to talk about our plans for summer until we have guidance from the Department of Ed of what we're going to be able to do. So if they don't open schools, allow us to open the schools back up for summer programming, then that's, you know, then we're going to have to worry about a summer virtual plan. And the next year's conversation, you know, we'll be talking about again with the commissioner and the boards of health, because that is going to be a discussion on how do we transition the students back. You know, are we going to be going on modified days and transitioning them at different times based on different grade levels and alphabets? What are we going to be doing about transportation in a very rural community because they all have to get on the buses? So those are conversations that, you know, will be forthcoming, but we don't have our guidance from the state or our local health inspectors, but the administrative team meets almost daily to talk about what are these next steps going to look like. So our next step right now is getting the things within the school building that teachers and students need and getting them back to students. Many of them didn't clean out their lockers quite as well as they would have if they were leaving for summer. Many of the teachers, now that we're on an extended period of closure, are looking for additional resources out of their classrooms. So the principals are working to create a safe entry back into the building, also being mindful that we are going into a peak. And so we're trying to keep our numbers down within the building. And so there's some scheduling that goes with that needs to occur in order to get everyone in and out safely without any contamination to the others that are in the building routinely because of our food programs going on.
Thanks. And then just to explain the agenda items, we have to prepare these, you know, 48 hours or more in advance from when the meeting is. So we had to prepare this before we knew what the governor was going to say, which is why some of the stuff is conditional and some of the stuff may not be things that we can talk about today, but it's good to get on the radar, you know, especially in terms of, you know, maybe a little bit too soon to tell, but how is the content going in some of the courses? Will the students have the prerequisites needed to move up to the next course? Will those courses have to be adjusted a little bit and change maybe what they do in the first month or so?
So with the shift with the power standards, and what is being offered. So right now we're still under the advisory of we're deepening the skills that were last taught on March 13th, that it wasn't introduction of new materials. In his call to us on Tuesday was the first time he talked about introducing new materials to students, so that we could get a sense of where they're going to end if we all focused on what it was to complete those powered standards for those grade levels. So again, it's, you know, the advisory from the commissioner has changed from what it was when he first had made the announcement for school closure. So we'll be waiting to see the guidance on the power standards and how are we assessing that to gauge participation, or, you know, how students are going to be in the fall. I mean, are we going to have regression? Yes, but part of what we're doing now is to at least prevent further regression, but then you're going to have skills that may not have been taught in such a robust way that we're going to have to rethink what we do during the first month of school across all grade levels.
May I add something?
Absolutely.
Please.
Before school, it was only the day before school closed when we really started to see the writing on the wall. we met with teachers at the elementary level to say, okay, if this is going to happen, like what is the, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to teach my kids these topics. And we made lists the day before school closed, which I resurrected this week and reshared. They're all shared docs. We reshared them with grade level teachers. And so they're updating them now because they know where they had gotten in the instruction of the standards. So we'll have lists at Wes and Les of where we got, where we didn't get to. And it'll be interesting to see how those align with whatever the power standards are that the commissioner gives. But we're prepared, of course, to make adjustments next year. You know, the receiving teachers will have that information. We'll have meetings about that, and we'll do what we need to do to make sure that we teach the standards that didn't get taught or the ones that we really have to teach.
Can I say something, Kim? At the middle and high school, we have curriculum maps. So we'll be able to go back and look through the curriculum maps, both existing ones, and actually there were some that were in development this year because curriculum is changing in certain areas. So that'll provide a resource to indicate what wasn't covered. But if we're thinking about power standards that are skill-based, one salve in this is that sometimes what they will have been touched upon in the process of the year, but they will have lost that, you know, substantial, you know, for us about a quarter and a half of review within class, so that the kind of activities that are taking place now in certain disciplines, again, as Kim said, they're focused on just deepening and review and deepening, and the standard itself has already been addressed, and the review and deepening will help achieve that power standard. For skill ones, for ones that are more focused on content, then that'll be a different story, and we'll have to address those gaps.
Thank you.
Nolan, do you have anything to add?
No.
Steve, next agenda.
Okay, so the next item is how are students doing with remote access? How are families doing with kids at home learning? With more people at home using Wi-Fi, is there still sufficient bandwidth for families? Or do we need to think a bit about when different classes are Zooming? I know in Williamstown, the public library has its Wi-Fi open so that people can drive to the parking lot there and just remotely access it. Is the Lanesboro Library doing something similar?
Yes.
Good.
Can I speak to this a little bit?
Please.
So we have been providing.
Eileen, announce yourself so that people
Oh,
that are
I'm
gonna watch
sorry.
afterwards. Thank you.
Eileen Bellistock, Director of Academic Technology. So I've been, we've been making sure that students had devices, especially the younger grades. We've been getting those into students' hands. We've been getting devices into teachers' hands. So since this whole announcement was made, we saw an upswing of the amount of families, you know, wanting devices, partly because they may or may not have limited, you know, they may have limited amount of devices in the home. For, you know, we've been working, we sent out some surveys to find out what kind of access and bandwidth that they were having in their homes, and we created a list. And beginning of the week, we should be getting the Khajiit hotspots in, which are educational hotspots. And we'll start reaching out to parents to get those in families' hands. And the nice thing about them is they have a strong educational filter. They also can have up to 10 devices per hotspot. So it will benefit entire families, not just our student population. I've been working with families on, you know, just some training with parents and students on some of the technology, as well as consistently doing it with the teachers. So I'm hoping once these hotspots are in, you know, we don't have to have people driving to the library parking lot. They can actually stay in their own home to access their education.
Wonderful. I know some of the teachers have deliberately chosen times that are different than others to try to minimize how many people from a family will be on at the same time. And you know, It's appreciated.
There's also ways that you could reduce the video output. You can turn off your video, close other apps that are open. So there are kind of a few tricks that seem to be helping people with connectivity. But yeah, I think if everybody's on Zoom at the same time, I know Google's having a problem with everybody on Google Meet at the same time. So
Right. And you can also directly plug your computer in and not use the Wi-Fi.
yeah, and that's a really good idea. And we do have Ethernets available for families. They don't work with Chromebooks, unfortunately, but they'll work with other devices. So that is another good option, Steve.
Right. So even if it doesn't help a student, it could help someone else in the house, which will then free up some bandwidth for the student.
Oh, absolutely. It's a win-win. With either we're offering it to the families or we're offering to the students. So absolutely.
No, one of the reasons I want to have this discussion is so that when this is written up and distributed, some of these things that people might not have thought of, and some of them I hadn't thought of earlier because it really wasn't a concern. But now with not just us at home, but with everybody on the street at home and everybody going on at the same time, now these little bits make a huge difference.
So if it's okay with Kim, I can put together kind of like a best practices with limited bandwidth, and if she wants to include it in her future communications, I could do that.
You have to update the FAQ so we can put it there. We can put it on the coronavirus site under where the parents are going for some of their training, some tips on how to improve your bandwidth, so that families are seeing it there as well. So we can go out in the Friday blast as well. So
perfect.
Yeah, that'd be terrific because small things like directly plugging in or closing some browser windows, a lot of people will not be used to doing that because there was no need in the past.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've done it with some people recently. It just plug it right into your router, and that seems to be solving some bandwidth issues.
Nice.
And then in addition to just the connection issues, I was also curious as to how students are doing with remote access. Certain classes are going to be easier to do remotely than others. What about the enrichment programs? What about the arts, the music? What about special education?
Yep.
What about gym?
So how are students doing with remote access? It depends on, who sends me a message or the principal's a message on that. So we have a lot of people that are having, families are sending us emails or phone calls in regards to having great success. And then we have families that, we have to remember a lot of families in our communities are made up of essential employees. And so we have students that are going to, an aunt, an uncle, or a grandparent because their daycare centers have been closed. And so they're not having as much luck with the remote access. They're getting the recorded messages. Kids are missing live sessions because as many trainings as we can offer for families to learn this. I heard a best from, a grandmom the other day, like, it's the first time I saw a Chromebook and having to even figure out how to turn it on. So we're just, the devices are going out, the assignments are going up, teachers are reaching out, but it's still not making it easy for everyone to access, or just the structure of having more than one child at home. And so, how do you balance that if you have 3 younger students at home that have to be on at different times or doing different things, but they still don't have that level of independence because they're, say, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 4th grade. They still need a parent with them. And if your spouse is working or you're a single family household, it's, those are the struggles. So the real struggles. So although there's pros and cons to how they're doing, both positive and negative, every household looks different. And we're hearing from lots of households. So we're trying to aid families in the processes that they're having at home, talk to the teachers involved about the assignments, providing some additional supports, and just kind of comforting them because we get it. People are really busy and there's a lot of stressors right now. And the last thing we want is the assignments that we're sending home to be another stressor for you. So
I know that at the high school or the middle school anyway, that paras have been doing some work in breakout Zoom rooms with 7th and 8th graders, and I'm really excited to start that at the elementary level. I know that some paras have been participating in the Google Hangouts and in Zoom, but to be able to have paras break off from the regular session to support kiddos, so maybe a parent doesn't have to do that for half an hour, I think that's going to be a really big help.
I have teachers on here. I have parents on here that have small children and grown children at home. You know, feel free to, you know, give us some input on how it's going, how it's, you know, what you as parents are hearing from other parents, just so that, you know, we can try to make some modifications to this to, you know, to get through till June. And if it's, you know, the new way of some normal, then, you know, so that we're aware of it and can address them, that would be great.
I can add on to what Joelle's saying. The small group approach has been very successful across the board at Lanesboro. A lot of teachers are going into smaller groups because they find they can have, you know, an extra 5 minutes with students before they get too squirrely looking at a computer. And I think it also helps with like the socially emotional aspect of being able to connect with a smaller group and socialize without having like that big grid of 24, 25 faces in front of you. So when the pairs break out into smaller groups, it really helps the students that sometimes fall through the cracks to get recognized and have that individualized time.
Right. Allie has her hand up, Steve.
Okay.
Thanks. I just wanted to note, so I have 2 small children at the elementary level, and I think Zoom is great for a lot of reasons. It's great for connecting. I think at least my small children, and I'm assuming it's not unique, they have a really difficult time on Zoom. It's Zoom is great for connection, but it almost ends there. I think it's so great that the teachers are reaching out. There are so many opportunities to connect with the class, with the teacher. Everyone has been so supportive, but at the same time, it's like, especially for my kindergartner, it's almost only good as far as letting her know that people exist in some 2-dimensional space still. But it's hard to interact over Zoom. It's hard, even I think, for the older kids to interact through Zoom. And I think it does have a lot of positives, but it's also good to be aware of its limitations. And even when we're pushing really great content out, it's, I think, not always being received in the way that we might want it to. So it's just worth being cognizant of that, I think, as we go forward, seeing how much the kids are really getting from it, what we can do there.
So we'll make sure that that's one of our questions on the survey. I see a hand, Ostrander. I'm sorry, first name escaped me. Hold on, you're muted.
She's frozen.
Okay, and then after that, it looks like Michelle also has her hand up.
Heather, are you all set? Can you, I think you're froze. Michelle, do you want to go? And then when?
Sure. So I am a parent. I'm also a teacher in a different district who's got a little over a week more experience with this than others. We use primarily Google Meet for our classrooms. I teach K-2 special ed. So as you can imagine, that's the population that is nearly completely not able to do it independently, or they're not, at least they're not able to connect independently. So
Right.
I will say that it gets better. It gets better as the weeks go by. The kids are able to mute and unmute themselves. So if the parents can get them set up, generally they can participate. I will say that doing whole group meetings, at least at my level, has not been as educational as we'd like it to be. It's a lot of pets parading across the screen and, you know, slime pulling and snack time. And and it can, so it's great social emotionally, but I think it's very difficult to deliver academics. So I think that what we need to keep in mind is that different districts are doing it differently. And because there is not sort of a one-stop shopping approach for this, it's like comparison is the killer of joy, right? Like we have a lot of folks comparing one thing to another, and I think that's part of the problem. So, I don't know the answer to any of these problems, frankly. I had a Google meeting today with a student that failed miserably. You can't really do behavior modification, over the computer. So I could say eyes on speaker 150 times, but I can't physically reach out and touch that child to get their attention. So there are some inherent problems. And so that's speaking from a teacher perspective. From a parent perspective, what is 2.5 hours to one kid is not 2.5 hours to another kid. And I will say that I have reached out to several teachers, and I have definitely received responses, very timely responses, and they're very willing to work with you. But I'm concerned that parents won't take that route because they either A, think that, if the teacher says this is 2.5 hours, it's 2.5 hours, go do it. Or they don't want to be that parent. So, I mean, obviously I don't mind being that parent. That's sort of my role, I guess. But, I think it's hard for them to gauge. It's hard for us as parents to gauge. Like they go up into the room and I think they're doing schoolwork, but I'm down here trying to teach, a first grader how to read. On a Google Meet I can't monitor them. And frankly, at 6 o'clock at night after dinner, I just don't want to. So, it boils down to there has to be some mental health for the teachers, their families, and their children. At the elementary level, I think overall, as a county, we're all kind of like, all right, listen, here's the stuff we have planned for you. You're the boss. If you think you can get to it, fabulous, go for it. I think it's different at the middle high school level, and I think that's also countywide. It's, sending out an email on Sunday, you're getting this email because I haven't received all or part of the work from you or your child. So it's different. It's just different. And I don't know how to approach it because I am an elementary school teacher and I do have high school, middle school children. So that's just my perspective.
So thank you. I think it's really important to note that what would be 2.5 hours in the classroom is not going to be 2.5 hours for everybody. And this is why I was bringing up the question about peer
Hey,
tutoring.
Steve, we have other people that have their hands up
Oh,
that are
okay,
looking
sure.
to give feedback.
Sure.
Sorry. So I have Heather Ostrander, before you got cut out. I see your message in the chat. Can you unmute yourself?
All right, is that better?
Yep.
Okay. Well, just very simply, we have 2 teachers in our house and 3 children, 1 in 6th and 2 in 2nd grade. And the biggest gift that I mentioned in the chat was that
Oops.
Lost you
You think
again.
your volume cut off?
Can we ask everyone to stop their videos and just have audio so that it might help with the communication on this? Okay, Heather?
does that seem better?
Yep, much clearer.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll just go over it again real quick. Given that we have 2 teachers and 3 children in school in our house, it's been a constant juggle of who's on what resources at what time and who has to get what done. And the greatest gift that has been given to us by all of our children's teachers have been these tentative schedules for the week that we can refer back to and modify for each of our children in ways that we know will be successful for them. So I know this is a huge undertaking and something to add on to teachers because I am doing it myself as a teacher, but one of the helpful tools that I'm sure most teachers are offering this, but if it's not being offered, is just a suggested schedule is very grounding as a parent.
So Heather, we have a suggested schedule for at least the elementary grades on the district website. We had put it up very early on to help with the pacing of things. So if people need it, it's on the district website under coronavirus, under our instructional learning plan tab.
Yes, but these are like individual per grade
Student.
courses.
Okay, perfect.
It's just super helpful. Just a thought.
Do you have a copy of it that you could share with me?
Well, what'll happen is like my student in 6th grade, his teachers will send out a weekly schedule of goals to try to accomplish on Google Classroom.
Okay.
It's their document, so I
Oh, okay. Nice. All right.
permission to share.
So I can read it out to them. The next one with the hand up is Amy Perry Mercier.
I will unmute myself. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So we have 3 elementary age children and a teacher and myself that is working from home. I think that the Zoom for my first grader has been especially important to connect with his peers. I think that it is with our one son who is, we're doing a lot of Zoom with utilizing my husband as a conduit, essentially, in order to do special education. And it does work surprisingly well. It just involves a lot of time, and it's going to be stressful once he has to start teaching because he's on vacation this week. So next week is back to a normal teaching schedule. We did have some pretty good feedback from my 4th grader and added some review sessions, which have been extremely helpful. So my daughter's not asking us over and over again questions. So I think it's going to be a bumpy road. You have to figure out what's going to work. But I think we have to make the best of a bad situation.
Right. So what I need to remind everybody of, I'm recording this so it will stream out as well, is we have devices. So if you're running short on devices that you thought at first was going to, because I have an email in here as a reminder from Christina, to contact us, and through our tech department will, make sure that we can sign out a device to you. Next with the hand up is Libby.
All right, can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. Hi. So I have an 8th grader, and can someone put their self on mute? It's kind of distracting. But the big issue for her is that each teacher seems to be on a different platform. There are 3 main ways for her to access assignments: email, Canvas, and Google. And trying to acquire all these different assignments and knowing which teacher is on which is very difficult. It would be great if it could be streamlined. I know everyone has their preferences by teacher, but if all the teachers were on Canvas or all the teachers were on Google, there'd be a lot less time searching for assignments, lost assignments. I think that's about it. There's just a lot of time wasted searching and frustration, a lot of frustration. That's it.
Okay. Mary is on this call, so I know that we are looking at the middle school platform. Julia Bowen, your hand's up.
Yes, let me start with some gratitude that I am sure all of those on the phone share, and that is the gratitude to Kim and Joelle and Mary and Nolan, in that I know you're hearing probably very disparate feedback from parents and held very strongly for different needs. And so I really appreciate that you're trying to be responsive to all of that. And also to you, Steve, for hosting, creating this agenda and hosting this meeting so that we had a place to share. I I think a couple things that I just wanted to provide feedback that I really appreciated. One is that I think I'm seeing I have a 5th and a 6th grader. I'm seeing the teachers, I feel like I'm seeing them maybe start to move from trying to simply replicate what they were doing in their classrooms to maybe doing things a little bit differently and being open to the possibilities that come from this opportunity, this situation. So writing assignments about the experience the kids are having is an example. So I think it's still academic, but it focuses on that. And I'm also seeing, I think I'm starting to see more connection, which is great. And we've really appreciated how quickly the teachers have responded when we've had questions. I do share the question if all parents will reach out. But I think you can only do what you can do. A couple things I'm hopeful that we could see more of. One is it's still, so my husband and I both work and we've got 2 kids, trying to work here too. Schedules that change at the last minute is really difficult. And so if there could be support and guidance to teachers around making sure that they try to set their schedules. They have for office hours, but now other things that are great just pop up with not a lot of notice. And so the notice is important for our family, but I assume for any working family right now. Another one is, and I really appreciated what Joelle said. I've heard a bunch of people say every household looks different. This is a new way of being. Comparison is the killer of joy. Michelle, I'm going to say that quote again and again. I think for parents, there's tremendous stress because we don't know what this is supposed to look like, and we're trying to figure it out. If there's a way the district could even communicate those things that you said today in a way that kind of lends grace to parents and says, however it's working is a good way to work. And there's no great way. So I think some sort of normalizing the challenge that we're in is helpful to hear from the leadership. And I guess the last thing I would say is any connection connection to me is the most important thing here between administrators and families, between teachers and students, maybe even, I hate to say this as an educator myself, more important than the actual curriculum. I think connecting with students, especially I say that as, mine are entering the middle school years where social issues are popping. I feel like that's really so important right now. Thank you. Sorry, that was a lot. Thank you.
Rob Matthews.
Yeah, I reiterate Julia's gratitude as well. We've seen some really special moments in both our kids. I have a daughter who's in 9th grade, and I have a daughter who's in 6th grade, and it's a mixed bag at times, but it's worked out pretty well. What I wanted to sort of piggyback on is Heather's comment about the scheduling. Probably one of the biggest stressors for our high schooler is that the classes tend to be scheduled back to back to back. And I know from my own work experience that when you have meetings, especially online meetings that are packed together like that without a break, it becomes really stressful as you approach the time that your other meeting or class is supposed to start and you're still in the previous class. So I don't know if that's a guidance thing that you can help with the teachers to try to give the kids that time in between, just to give them a few minutes of downtime and relax some of their stress about getting from one class to the other.
Thanks, Rob. Andrea Malone.
Thanks, Kim. Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand virtually, so thanks for looking at the notes. I think the thing that, first of all, I just wanted to say that when we did move into the past the first couple weeks of enrichment and into teaching, the feeling in our house raised significantly. Kids were so happy to be reconnected with other students. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say this to begin with. I have twins who are both in 8th grade, so both middle schoolers. and also with their teachers. And I've seen some remarkable examples from teachers of just listening in on these Zoom classes of, you know, the empathy and how they're really trying to connect with the kids. And I'm sure they do that inside the school. We just don't always get to see it. But in this time of great stress, that has been, I think, a wonderful thing to watch. It's been very encouraging. I would agree that scheduling, some days are so much heavier than others, and my girls are not always sure how to structure their time outside of Zoom meetings. So if there were a way to try and balance things out a little bit, I think it would really help those kids who are trying to develop time management skills in doing so. Because I think, you know, high schoolers may already have those time management skills, and the elementary school kids may need to be very closely managed and scheduled with time. But I think the middle schoolers are somewhere in between, so they kind of need a bridge. And I, you know, in hearing from friends and talking to people, I would say people are more worried about their kids feeling connected and feeling like they can keep up with what's happening, more so than what are they going to achieve academically this year. And one question I have, and I don't want to end the discussion with getting feedback from parents, but so maybe we could table this for later, is I would love to hear what power standards are, because I'm not familiar with that term as a parent. And it seemed to me like that was perhaps a different or a certain level at which you were looking for achievement or progression. And it's just something not familiar to me. And I'm wondering if that might be a concept that would be helpful for parents in general to understand.
Yeah, I'm Joelle, your hand is up, but are you going to answer Andrea's question? So he hasn't identified, Andrea, just so you know, he hasn't identified what power standards and what they're going to be across grade levels. That is something that I think his team at the Department of Ed was working on. So for us, it's, you know, some basic standards of reading, writing, math. But again, at the high school, middle school, and elementary school, it's very different. So it's grade level specific, the standards that are the ones that we should get through at the end of each year. But I'll defer to Joelle if she wants to talk about this.
I was actually going to talk as a parent, but I'm happy to start by saying we haven't heard yet what the power standards are, and I'm assuming what they will be is the list of the most important things that the Department of Ed is telling us at every grade level that we should try to teach by the end of the year. And I would just say, absolutely, 100% yes, we will make sure that we communicate that in the best language that we can to parents as soon as we know what they are. I think, I don't know when we're going to even find out, because we're all asking the same question. What are the power standards?
Right. So there's not a Friday meeting schedule. I'm just scanning through. We have a special education one. Russell Johnston usually gives us some preliminary information before the commissioner does. So we might have some update from the special ed component tomorrow, but the commissioner has not set a meeting with us for tomorrow. Right now his meetings have been going on Tuesday morning, and I know his group had asked that when we met on Tuesday, discussed having something to us by the end of the week. But I appreciate the commissioner and how busy they are, but I have Najia on this call as well as the administrative team. And when he tells us by the end of the week, I'm not sure which week he means sometimes, because it took us 2.5 weeks to just get a letter from him to send out to all the families. So we're at his mercy on some of this. So as soon as we get it, we'll be pushing it out.
May I say a statement as a parent? This is Joelle. I don't do this very often, but I am the parent of a senior. And so while I don't have the challenges that I know so many people do who have younger students at home, having an older high school student is a challenge in itself. And my main worry all along has been, how are we going to keep seniors particularly invested in school and connected to school and feeling like it's worth doing anything at all? And I just want to thank the high school people who are on this call, because I think that's happening very much. My personal kid does not have back-to-back classes, so that I could see how that would be. I have back-to-back Zoom meetings I can barely handle. So having kids sit through back-to-back meetings, I can see that would be difficult, but that's not the case for him. And I believe there's a high level of attendance at the Zooms for the seniors, and kids are doing work, and it's really sad, the things that they're not going to get to experience. But I feel as a parent grateful that the school is making such efforts to keep kids connected in the best way that they can. So that's just me with my parent hat on.
Thank you. Steve?
So, thank you everybody for your comments. The only thing I wanted to just bring up was, is it worth looking at, trying to have more peer tutoring? Is it worth trying to, consider reading buddies? And again, these are things that we can discuss at future meetings as we get a better sense of how things are going. Should we move on to point E? Okay, so point E, is it worth considering more coordination to ease the burdens on teachers? Can we have, say, all teachers in the county doing just, trying to, share resources, share best practices, share what things are working? If anybody wants to talk about any conversations that are happening. I know we've already talked a lot about some of this in the conversations earlier.
So coordination amongst the county when we're, oh, Mary has her hand up, so give me 1 minute. Sorry, Mary, just didn't see that. So right now the teachers are working within our region to coordinate with one another and make those schedules work so that we're available across many different hours of the day. Coordination at the community level, I know, is something the Berkshire County Education Task Force had brought out early on, but they were using a platform Canvas that we use at the middle high school, more so the high school, and it wasn't a platform for the elementaries. It's not designed for that. We as a school district had looked at that and having Eileen be able to weigh in. So is it something that, as we have a superintendent, county superintendent meeting on Friday morning, so I can put this item on there to see, looking into the future and knowing that this happened and, all of us weren't, prepared for this, is it worth keeping on our superintendent's table for future discussions so that we are more prepared, that we do have a remote learning plan that we can pop into in the event that there's another crisis in the world?
So I'll put on my math professor hat for a second.
Sure.
And I've actually done some coordination with colleagues at other institutions where I'll do this lecture, you do that lecture. And in fact, in less than a day, I will be having a conversation with people who are doing summer research programs in terms of thoughts about what might be best practices, what might work well, what are you doing? Oh, that might work best, thanks for sharing. And just thought it would be worthwhile to just see what information we can pass, amongst ourselves as to what are the issues we're having, what seems to be working with us. Do you have anything that might help with this issue?
Okay.
How do I raise my hand? This is Maureen, and I can't figure out how to raise my hand.
I know Mary had her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
1 second.
Right. If you click on more,
So
there might be a way to raise your hand on that. Yeah, if you click on the more button in the upper right corner, at least on my Zoom, I'm raising my hand right now.
Yeah, I think you have to list the participants in that window, which doesn't necessarily show up as default.
and it's to the right. Kim, may I speak?
Yeah.
Thank you. I understand what Steve is getting at, and you made the reference to thinking about a plan for the future, but looking at the remainder of this year and wanting to take advantage of all the intellectual and emotional energy that teachers and paras, administrators, families, and students are putting into this. I don't think we have the space to have larger conversations to incorporate county, like cross-county work right now. I think if we're looking at something in the future, especially when we're looking about developing new content and new skills, that there's place for that and for sharing ideas. But I think right now, when we're looking at our individual curriculum that we have developed for our students at the various grade levels and in different disciplines, that our energy needs to be put into teaching and very much revising. This is a really valuable conversation for me. I'm hearing things that I've heard from parents and students repeated, which is, you know, wonderfully fortifying. And there are some changes, because we're going to be here till June, that we can sort of gracefully implement to maybe ease some of the meetings, distribute meetings in a different way, to look at how things are balanced for students. But I'd like to see the energy go there versus cross-county conversations.
Okay, someone else has their hands up now. I have Maureen Anderson.
Yes. So I guess I was also, Mary said it very nicely, but I am concerned about that thought, because what I teach and what I do with my students is very much directed to what I know about them and what they need. Yep. And so if I were to open that up, I feel like I wouldn't be connecting in a way that is necessary for the students that I have and that I'm responsible for. So I agree that so much of my time and energy is spent doing just that. So if I had to spend more time and get to more Zoom meetings to connect with teachers from other places in the county, while it might be lovely to connect, I think it's just too much at this point. I worry about that.
Yeah, and I need to reiterate, it is not on my agenda to do. I will let you know that this Berkshire County superintendents talk about lots of things. Steve brought it up on this for this agenda, so I bring it to that table. But like I said in the beginning, like, you guys are working really hard collaborating with one another. Right. So to introduce another set of third grade teachers right now, don't think it's a plan. But futuristically, I just think I'm being asked by a school committee member to explore it, so I will put it on the table of the round table.
So what I meant by this was just to facilitate conversations, to help share resources, or to help share possible solutions to problems. That's all I meant. For some of the stuff I'm doing, there are some things where I can very easily give a video on content. It is not the same as the interactions with students.
Right.
And so, to me, this is not meant to be, formal, large number of meetings or whatnot, but just, the conversation we're having amongst ourselves right now, where we're talking about the issues we're facing. This is useful to hear. It's often useful to hear what other people are going through and what other people are doing. And that's why I'm having, another meeting for summer research programs tomorrow. Doesn't mean I'm going to do what they say, but it's interesting to hear how they're dealing with the issues as well. And that's what I meant by this.
Okay. I do not see any more hand up. Michelle Johnson, your hand is
I don't
up.
have the 3 dots that allows me to virtually raise my hand. I don't know where that is, so I'll find it after.
You see a participant thing at the bottom of the screen that you can click on. Some of your extra things that you can do are within that.
Oh, I see it. I got it.
Okay.
I'm on it. Great. I got it. But what I wanted to say was about the collaboration between districts. I totally get what Steve is saying. But Steve, I think it's also important for you to know that many of the things that are taught at the elementary level have some sort of online component that would already say, teach the content, right? Like, most teachers don't use it because it's very It's, it can be a little bit lengthy and maybe not as interesting, but I think that what you're talking about is exactly that, delivering the content and then the teacher sort of filling in the other stuff. So I think that already exists to some degree, depending on the curriculums that you're using.
Well,
And
a lot of it exists as well. There's a lot of great resources on the web which have wonderful, 8 to 20 minute videos on different content. And what I just meant to say is just encouraging people to talk broadly to various groups to see what's working for you. Have you found videos that you find particularly useful?
yes, and what I'd say is, as a teaching community, I think we already do that.
Great, that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Because that can help relieve the work if other people share, hey, I found this really good one.
Right, but all I'm saying is that at some point that becomes also overwhelming, right? Because there was so much coming in the first couple of weeks, you kind of had to sort through it all. And that takes a lot of time. So it makes total sense what you're saying. And I think the teachers already have their peers that they collaborate with. And I think that happens to a large degree already. So I guess I'm saying it's probably what you want is probably already happening.
Perfect. That's great. That's great to hear. Because anything we can do to relieve the burdens on the teachers as we go through this.
Agreed.
So I think the last item was the social emotional aspect. How is everyone doing in these? Are there any groups that seem to be hit particularly hard? Are there any things we should be thinking about doing?
So just so that the people on this Zoom, as well as the viewing public, so as the administrative team, we began early on coming up with ways of how do we connect with those that, if they don't have the technology in their home, if they don't have a working phone line, if we send an email and a robocall, we're not going to get to them. They're not going to get our information. By sending the robocalls and emails, we learned that some of the emails were blocked, and so we were able to unblock them. But we also developed a Google form so that if, even from the beginning of this, when students weren't actively engaged or we weren't hearing from them, the teachers fill out the Google form. It goes to administration. From there, it goes to guidance counselors, social workers, school psychologists. So there's a host of steps in between. If all those fail, then we go personally to put a notice on the door so that they know that we're looking for them. We knock to see. There's very few of us that are going out to do those home stops, and there's very few of them that have had to occur. So the form is being utilized. The commissioner couldn't stress enough on his call with us the other day to make sure that we're keeping track of those kids that we're not hearing from. His quote was that we need to get them hooked back to the mothership. And so, we have a process that we're using, with Keith and Bethany and Christy and Wendy and Jerry, PJ, Bev, and Jessica. We have people that are doing that additional outreach for those that we know about. Now there are families that haven't reached out yet. There are families that started to reach out in the last few days. It's a lot. So we had our kids that were on our radar to begin with. Now we have kids that we're reaching out to because we know what their families are doing in the community. And so we'll continue that reach out. And, I put my phone number out there, the 413-652-5767. That phone is with me morning, noon, and night. And I take the calls. If I can't answer them, I connect them to the appropriate administrator. And so we're reaching families. We have access to some translation services for those that are, that we need to reach that are non-English speaking homes. So we're hearing from folks. The teachers know what they need to do to get us the names if they're starting to see a decline in student participation or no engagement at all. Ellie shared with me earlier a no engagement letter that will be sent out so that we can try to help families through this. And if there's no engagement, sheerly because there's just too much going on in their household, but we know everyone is safe and it's not time yet for them to engage, but they know how to when things are a little quieter for them, then we just need to document that and then, just do continuous outreach. But some families just are not in a place that they can manage all of this, plus their stuff going on with their own jobs working remotely. So we're being very respectful of that. Steve?
Yep, just seeing if anybody else had anything they wanted to add to this.
I don't have any hands up.
Oh, wait.
Go ahead, Mary.
Sorry, I know I was trying to find my hand. I just want to say that once we feel like we get our academic structures in places and there's revision that we need to do and dialing back to a degree and enhancing some communication or refining communication, we're also looking to develop the social connections with students. In the middle school right now, Liza Barrett's working with middle school SOC to put on some trivia nights, and then we're going to scale it up for the high school so we can have some engagement that's school related. I don't know if you remember that we were supposed to have the C-Fun trivia night, which is a big event, and that had to be canceled because it was to happen after school was shut. So we're looking for things like that. And obviously the seniors are greatest in the forefront of our minds about looking for ways to celebrate them and to help create closure from them and for the 6 years that they spent at Mount Greylock. But that will contribute to the social emotional health of students as well, finding alternative non-academic ways to make connections, but still through school. We'll talk about club advisors and athletics and connections there in the future with Kim, and just sort of see what possibilities might be available there as well.
Piggybacking on what Mary just said, this is Joelle. We are starting to do things like we're reviving the 6th grade spirit committee. So we're planning an all school assembly, which we'll record, but we'll send out, and we're gonna just encourage people to watch it at the same time that we would have it in school on Friday. We are working on a yearbook for the 6th graders. We're even trying to find ways to somehow do a Shakespeare performance for 4th grade. You know, those are some important things for students. We're talking about the musical for 6th grade. That's a whole other thing. But we're also encouraging teachers to let us know if they're concerned about children's parents. So yes, we're concerned very much about our students, but a lot of how our students are doing is directly correlated to how parents are doing. So we are getting concerns on our concern form that Kim mentioned about parents, and we're following up with them. We're making referrals as needed. Sometimes it's just the principal texting to check in multiple times a week to have a person so somebody knows they're not alone. Sometimes it is a referral to an agency. So it's, again, I just wanna say we're just so grateful to teachers and to parents and just the community as a whole, because people are really coming together at this difficult time. And it is hard, but there are very, very many things that make me grateful every day. So thanks.
Anybody else? All right, so there is no business not anticipated by the chair within 48 hours of the meeting. I just want to echo what's been said and just thank everybody for stepping up above and beyond, and dealing with all the punches that are being thrown, and providing all of these wonderful resources and working to help the kids in the community, from the education that's going on to the meals that are coming from the schools. Wishing everyone the best and have a great rest of the day. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
I will second. Any discussion? This is the formal part of the meeting that's always so exciting.
Do we need to adjourn our individual school council meetings though?
Yeah, so in fact, why don't we let the individual councils adjourn first so that we don't close the meeting?
So I'm going to motion to adjourn the Mount Greylock meeting.
Second.
Thanks, Rob.
A motion to adjourn the Williamstown Elementary School Council meeting.
Second.
Thank you.
Sorry, who seconded so I can get that for the minutes? Was that Libby?
Yep.
Thank you.
Guessing that these will all be unanimous, do we all want to just vote aye right now?
Aye.
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 Any opposed to any of the motions? There we go, we were efficient. All right. The meetings are now adjourned. Have a good rest of the day, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Have a good one.